Welcome to the Resilient Butterfly Podcast. My goal is to share inspiring stories of healing and recovery through many diverse approaches and models. Our guests bring incredible lived experiences, insights, and/or professional expertise, each with their own unique path. While we highlight and celebrate these stories, our intention is to inform, inspire, and demonstrate resilience and creativity. This podcast does not endorse any one approach. We believe there is more than one way to heal, and we're here to showcase the resilience and possibilities that exist. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Resilient Butterfly. Today, I have as my guest Dr. Louise Stanger. Louise is a colleague, a friend I've known for many years, who is the founder of All About Interventions. But beyond that, she's written a few books, at least two of them that I've read, if not more, and so many other accolades that I can go on and on and on for the whole podcast. But I want to really dive into her life and her life story, and as a woman that we have many things in common, I think, and we don't have some things are not in common, but we have what is resilience in our lives. And there are a lot of people that have resilience, and then there are those that are looking for that and how to get that resilience. So, Louise, my friend.
Pam, I'm so honored. First of all, I can't tell you how much I love the title of your podcast, Resilient Butterfly, because obviously, if you know me, my logo's always been a butterfly. But to be able to share our hearts and share our good times, our not so good times, and the ways that we were able to navigate and live life as we do to the fullest, I think is a gift. I know you have, and I think I have, although sometimes I wonder.
I know you have, and you've had a lot of tumult in your life that some people haven't, would crawl under their bed covers and never come out again. So what you've actually created is a life to share with other people, your experiences in your life to share with other people of hope and integrity, and to be able to build that resilience and help others can build the resilience. So I want to start with your book, the memoir, your book, Falling Up, because that really shows what the traumas have been in your life. And we can just touch on them, or you can dive into what you want to talk about them.
Well, my first book is called Falling Up, a memoir of renewal. And when I look back on my life, sometimes you get dealt things that are way out of your control. I experienced over 6 sudden deaths. Probably the most significant one was when my father died by suicide when I was age 7. Mm-hmm. And in those days, nobody talked about everything. Everything was a secret. I wasn't allowed to go to the funeral. I just knew there was a cluster of a lot of things that were wrong. And the hardest part about it was, here I was, I could tell you I had a wonderful story about why my father died. He was Superman. And I was sure he had been taken out by kryptonite, except that I went back to school reluctantly, and I was on the playground, and it's one of those memories you can call up, which is trauma. And little Ruthie Ann, freckled-faced redhead, came skipping over to me. And she had heard that, she said, "Do you know why your father died?" Now, I wasn't going to tell little Ruthie Ann that he was taken out by kryptonite. That was my story. And she said, "He hung himself with a tie."
Oh, and my goodness.
When that was said, it was like an explosion, reverberated through my brain, through everything. And, at that time, you're 7, so you really don't know what's going on with your mother, who really came from a background of mental health and substance abuse, and also relatives are really challenging when someone dies. They blamed her, but later on in life, I learned his family had intergenerational mental illness. His parents were immigrants, and
Mm.
and they also died by suicide. So, but I didn't know that till I was much later. What helped me was luckily my aunt had some money, and she gave my mother money because she didn't have any and sent me to a place called Campwood Echo. Campwood Echo was run by a couple. They were both social workers, Leon and Rose Rubenstein. And this wonderful man just gave me free space.
Mm.
I learned how to shoot a bow and arrow. I shot a rifle. I rode horses. I cleaned, but somehow or other, the world was safe and I was an okay person because I was
Hmm.
sure I was not okay. And when you ask what helped you, Mr. Rubenstein had also run the local Irene Kaufman Center, which is like your Jewish
Sure,
YMCA.
sure.
And I ended up going there forever. I also ended up going to this camp forever. Like I became a CIT.
Mm.
So Andrew Billingsley, the famed sociologist, talks about screams of opportunity. He helped me by finding a safe place. Was there turmoil? Yes, there was. Was there commotion? My mother subsequently remarried. That husband had a substance use disorder. So there was, but through that, there were certain people that were in my life. Um,
Hmm. To
even
guide you, to be
to
there
guide
for you.
me. Yeah. Even when I went off to college and I didn't have any money when I went to college. And two social workers under Leon took me down to the Social Security office to see, or the Veterans office, to see if I could get some money. Unfortunately, that money was already being taken, but they helped me navigate the way. So there's a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the second biggest sudden death I had was my third child. And he was the apple, and you have girls and, you're Jewish, you got to have a son, right? And Eric was born not premature, but I kept thinking there was something wrong. There was something wrong. And it was the first time my first husband was a dentist and he went away to a dental conference. And lo and behold, I overslept. And I
Mm.
woke up in a panic because I had two other children. And I
Hmm.
went in the room and he was blue. And then I called,
At
I
what
was
age was he?
3 months old.
Oh, wow.
Sid's death. It was Sid's death. I called, first I called my neighbor who was the only cardiologist in town and to come down. And then I called the police. And I lived in a house that looked like it was gone with the wind, a big circular thing. And my little girl Felicia was so brave. I remember as clear as day, she put on a Superwoman shirt over
Mm.
a dress and had come down. And my other daughter. But when the police come, they stand guard. You're never allowed to be back in. It's because of foul play
Sure.
what they thought. And the only blessing out of that was that the coroner his name was Sidney Saltstein and
Mm-hmm.
his wife Sally. Because in those days they thought, there was all kinds of myths on Sid's death. Like it happened to mainly poor people of color. Well,
Right.
there's no poor person of color. This was me. And the only thing that saved me was Sidney Saltstein's wife, who also had a Sid's death. Because in
Mm.
that, it's one person to another.
Sure.
The
Must
third,
have been just really devastating for you. I
oh,
can't
it
even
was.
can't even imagine.
I was totally emotionally unavailable to my children. I remember going to the local CVS armed with baby goods, like delirious, like just emotional, like talking to the people at CVS. Oh, here, I need to return this. I need to return that. It was um it was surreal.
Yeah.
And then again, with the other two children, I can't honestly, I coined a term later in life when I worked with widows that you're non-intentionally emotionally unavailable, because I obviously was non-intentionally emotionally unavailable to them. There's no rhyme, there's no reason about that. And, luckily again, I had friends that came to the rescue. There was commotion over there was a lot of discord over my husband didn't want the baby buried. I said, yes, he has to be buried. So there's
Oh,
a
wow.
lot of tumult.
Sure.
And I was lucky because I also still had, it was funny. I had been a graduate student, and Pam, and I was in graduate school, you were supposed to get analyzed. But you have a training analyst who never has anything happen. So Dr. John Hassler at the time was my training analyst. And so I had the support of a mental health professional. He
That's
really,
incredible. Wow.
yeah, and it was like, you're not supposed to have anything happen when you're doing that. You're supposed to be, he's a training analyst.
So he really worked for his training, the training, right?
Yeah, he was a psychiatrist. He really earned his training tenfold. And then I did get pregnant right away after that to have my fourth child. And that was scary.
Mm-hmm.
And Shelby, who is absolutely beautiful, bear the brunt of that. I don't think that child was ever put down. It was the only time when we had help because the fear was so great
Mm-hmm.
um, in that respect. And so those are,
How old were your other two children, the older ones?
well, they were, one was 5 and one was almost 10. So
Mm.
there was a differential.
Sure.
No, yeah, when she was born, not when Eric died. They were younger.
But
But
old enough for memories to be there.
oh my God, definitely memories, definitely for figuring out, definitely, and what you learn about grief, as you know, everybody has a differential reaction to grief. And if you're little, like if I went and pulled my hair out, nobody understands death. In fact, I thought this was helpful for me. You take a piece of your hair, you pull it, and it's no more. I mean, that's how we talk to children. And, having them, it wasn't their fault. It wasn't anything. And how did they have it? I was lucky to have a lot of good friends who would come and care for them
Sure.
as well. But then the kicker again was my first husband died suddenly and unexpectedly after bicycling 60 miles the day after Easter.
He had a
And
heart attack, or was he
he
hit?
heart attack. He had
Heart
a heart,
attack. Wow.
yeah, and he went into the center divide. So that was um,
And that was how long after you had your fourth child?
after I had my fourth child. Let's see. No, Sydney was close to 19 or 20. Felicia was in high school and Shelby was the youngest. So there was a time span
Sure.
in between that. And what was significant about that was I then became a third generation widow. My grandfather, who I was named for, Louis Swartz, had a heart attack giving a political speech for the governor of Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
My own father, as I shared, died by suicide, and my first husband died suddenly. That led me to want to learn about other widows, not in the traditional sense. These kinds of things, you don't go to a hospice for long. It's totally different. But when I went to do my dissertation, if it's interesting to you, I was
Yeah.
already famous in the alcohol and other drug prevention world as an academic. I already had $5 million of NIH and AAA grants in harm reduction. But when I went back much later to do my doctorate degree, I just had this wonderful business professor, and she was interested in narrative and portraiture. So my dissertation is on women who are widowed at a young age and
Oh, wow.
women. And I went all across the country because it was so fascinating. And from there, I guess making lemonade is I got to work with the New York Fire Department, the Widows of 9/11,
Oh,
because I was the only one in the country. My daughter helped me put together a website, which you would have loved because it was butterflies
oh yeah.
and it was sex, dating, remarriage, sleeping, working. It all the qualitative things. And a young journalist group called The Link didn't know what to write about 9/11, didn't know what to do about widows. And, firemen and widows are very different.
Sure.
Like the smell, they had the helmets. And when 9/11, many firemen went home to the widows. They did not go back to their wives. So it was just a real different time. So I helped them with that.
Yeah, those are strange times. Did you live in New York while you were doing that, or were you doing it virtually?
No, I was in
Going
Pittsburgh,
back?
Pennsylvania, and I would go
Uh,
back. No, there
got it.
wasn't Zoom then. I don't think there was a
Yeah, so
much.
you were in Pittsburgh during 9/11. When did you move out to California?
Oh no, I was in California. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Went to California when I was 20 years old.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
thinking of the timeline there, but
No, when I was 20, I left. I was my BA I got from University of Pittsburgh. I left to get married to my first husband. He was in the Navy attached. He was a dentist attached to the Navy. We moved out here
because
to.
that's where I met you in San Diego for the first
That's
time.
right. That's right.
That's why we
Exciting.
were talking about that. So, on to your next book, because we're talking about all the trauma, and now we're reflecting on aging from the Sunset Marquee. And I just have to show this beautiful portrait. This is one of the most beautiful pictures and colorful that I love in a book. And what made you decide to write this book?
Well, it was completely serendipitous. To be honest, I'm friends with a world-class photographer, Cheryl Fox. She's done amazing work with lots of people. And I thought I needed to update my website and I needed a new photo. I love the marquee. It's like a muse to me. I live near there. I don't have to go into all that. We did a shoot all day long. We started at 9, we ended at 5. And when we were done, I took a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper, and all of a sudden I wrote, let the music in.
Mm.
Uh, reflect, be active, reflect, talk about the tough stuff, put your big girl panties on. And then I said, when I grow old, I'll live in the Sunset Machine, or when I grow old, I'm just going to celebrate myself. That is how the book was born. And Cheryl Fox, who's so terrific, she looked at me like, no, literally, it was this piece of paper had it written on it.
Uh-huh.
I said, I can do this. And she said, okay. She had just done a major book, beautiful coffee table book this people should get. It's on women that Max Sarah had underwritten. And she said, I said, but I don't know how I'm going to put it together. And she said, oh, don't worry. I can help stitch this together.
Oh, wow.
So I started writing. And in about 2.5 months, it was done. And maybe 3 it was really a fast write. It's a quick read and everything. And it was done. But to me, it's really a playbook for living. Let the music in. Whatever your music is, I like country music, I like Tina Turner, but listen to the sounds and sights around you. That's so important to you. And I had to learn how to let the music in, because obviously I could have gone another way.
Right.
And not. And then be active. Be active, be out in the world, be out physically, spiritually, mentally. For me, it's like I'm very bad, but I'm a pickleball player or a swimmer or a walker. Somewhere be out. But then reflect. Take time and look forward and look backward.
Yeah.
Be willing to do that. That's a lot of hard work that we can help guide people with.
Sure.
And then talk about the tough stuff. If you don't talk about the tough stuff won't go away.
Yeah,
And
it just keeps simmering,
it
right?
just keeps simmering, and we have all the fancy modalities in the world, from EDMR to tapping to everything else. But it's really being able to talk about the tough stuff and learn that there's something greater than yourself and that you are okay, that you are enough. And that is always, I think, when you have a lot of that, like, what did I do wrong? Especially a
Sure.
mother losing a child. What could I have done? How could I have stopped that? That's it. But what could you do well? And
Hmm.
talk about the tough stuff, and then you move forward and celebrate each day, celebrate with a gratitude list. We know that Edmonds will tell you that if you do a gratitude list with somebody else, it can change your brain chemistry. But
Sure.
don't be afraid to live life.
I
And
was talking to Dr. John Diamond, who is with the Hanley Center. We recorded on Friday, and we were talking about some of these same things, the practice of everyday prayer, meditation, being able to move our body, the gratitude list. Those simple things could take only maybe an hour at the most for everything, but moving ourselves, moving our body, and as you say, celebrating. But we also have to reflect, because if we don't move through that trauma in our body or through our mind, it attacks our body in many ways.
it does.
And I'm a cancer survivor, and I've really reflected on twice, and I've reflected on that myself. In that, okay, so what do I do differently? And you know what? I had a period of time I did EMDR, and it was the first time I had my blood drawn that I didn't have and I'm blanking on the CRP was always high for me. And that was the only time after doing some EMDR that it actually normalized for the first time in my life. And as many times as I've had the CRP. And so with that is like, we don't have to do difficult things, but being able to talk about them, be able to move through them.
Yeah, I too have done EMDR, and I couldn't do the eye stuff. They did tapping, but I loved it. But the other thing is you have to grieve your losses. You
Mm-hmm.
have to actually do, I think, grief work, because underneath you could get angry, mad, but underneath that there's a deep sadness.
Yeah.
And you have to grieve that in order, I think, to move on, in order to be the woman that you're meant to be, the man you're meant to be, and that you have that capability and that goodness. And so
Sure.
you do have to have a topic sentence, I believe, that I am enough.
Mm-hmm. So you say grief work. What type of grief work are you recommending for the audience?
Well,
Some of the things.
well, I never was a joiner. Okay, so not grief groups. Well, in my research, I'll go back to being an academic. Grief groups seem to be prone, if we're talking about death, since really for people who have long-term illnesses. But even then, when I was interviewing widows, and you had a spouse that had Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, when you started interviewing someone, it was as if they were already dead. So
Mm.
that kind of grief work has to be anticipatory. How do I live with someone that's no longer who I think they are and who they are?
Mm-hmm.
How do I grieve those little losses that I have? Like how do we help children grieve? Daddy's not going to be at your wedding, not going to be at your graduation, not even going, not present, not going to watch you pass your driver's test. There's all kinds of ways in which we have to acknowledge and hold space for different people with grief. I don't know. I mean, I'm really good at working with people with grief. I don't have a recipe. For some people, at least in widowhood, it was one widow to another. I followed, for a dissertation, I followed chat rooms for 2 years. And it was the anonymity of the chat room. I also went to some grief groups, but they were primarily at hospice. And that's a whole different area to deal with than something else. But, even with aging, we have to grieve. Like, if you look in the mirror, oh my God, some days I am that bright-eyed, blue-eyed little kid that was on a horse or swimming or being naughty. But then when you look in the mirror, you're almost a 79-year-old woman. You creak and groan a bit. And so the loss of whatever youth is no longer undulating before my eyes, but we know in our age, we are drop dead gorgeous.
Yes, we are.
I'm going to be 79. I don't know how old you're going to be, but we are.
I'm 69, so I'm 10 years younger.
So we're drop dead gorgeous, but we do grieve that
we've changed.
We've changed. We're no longer that well-oiled machine, as Theodore Litz once wrote. We creak and groan a bit. And so, it could be loss of income, it could be loss of things, or it could be, loss of menopause.
Well, there are a lot of transitions in our lives, and I think more than for women than for men, but we transition our lives, at least I have, multiple times.
Yes.
My kids going from elementary school to middle school, that changed my life because of what my responsibilities were then high school. And then, in my work situation, opening my business versus working for someone else, how scary that is, right? And then being able to transition, okay, that's stable. So now there's a downturn of whatever's happening, or all the transitions that the whole world had in COVID. There's so many.
Yeah, there is. And one of the interesting findings, though, for women that were widowed at a young age, is they all found newfound freedoms. For example, I was at USD when I was doing this research, and Mary Hughes was president of USD, and she was cute. She was so cute. She looked like a Barbara Bush kind of woman. And I was up in her office, and she agreed to be interviewed by me. And she recounts that she was once at Parks College, which is an aeronautical university. And, she just didn't know whether she was going to do anything. And her mother was also a widow, and they got invited to a fine dinner. So they go to all these Navy wives' homes for dinner, and they have a very, very heavy, big repast, big roast, potatoes, and everything. And these ladies were all widows. And after dinner, ladies pull back their chair, they get up, and Mary doesn't know exactly what's going to happen. Her mother doesn't. They turn the TV on, and lo and behold, they are all dancing now to Jack LaLanne. And she asks, why is that? And they all said, well, now my husband's never let us dance, so now we're dancing. It could be there's a newfound freedom. Mary Hughes will say she became a university president because she had so much time. Now she was a widow. I can tell you that I think the history that even though I'm remarried, there's this thing, once a widow, always a widow, but my daughters all had to be self-supporting. It doesn't matter what their loved ones do.
Sure.
So everything I found there was a newfound freedom for many people.
Yeah, because many times people who are women who are widows married either before college or during or after college. So they were young. Yeah. And you still don't really know your full self. Even at the age of 40, I don't think you know, for 50 maybe. But so when you become a widow, then you find things that you actually can own for yourself that you may not have had the opportunity with a spouse. I can certainly see that. So with our closing for the audience here, the listeners, I would love for you to be able to impart some wisdom for everyone in regard to the resilience that you have experienced, that you have as a result, and the best way for people to take one step at a time for them to get there.
I guess I'll go back to, go slow. stop, breathe. In the morning, maybe do a morning meditation, try a gratitude list with a friend, but let the music in. Listen to the sounds. It's springtime, so it's beautiful time for birds, for nature. Try and be out somewhat in nature, and be gentle with your soul.
Mm-hmm.
I guess a one wordism is don't confuse temporary for permanent.
Mm-hmm.
We all have things happen and we all can go off the catastrophic end. But yet, we all can weather that. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
Help is a gift. And there's many, many behavioral healthcare helpers out there that would be more, and you have to find the right one who
Mm-hmm.
has that good experience and that you click with and do it. But don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. There's over 268 self-help groups in the United States. If you're a groupie, don't do that. Sometimes one-to-one works better. And give yourself the gift of I'm okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And honor yourself, right? Honor
Yeah,
yourself.
honor yourself. That's what I'm talking about. Honor yourself because you're important. And I guess when you go back and you think about how fleeting life is, and you could go back and say, "Oh, if I could only do this over." You can't. But what you can do is live each day. Like I'm really excited. I've done so many different things in my life, and this book, I'll get back to this, was just so much fun to
It
do.
looks like it. I mean, even just the portraits. For you to
Yeah,
do that all day long, I would love that opportunity.
I mean, it was so much fun. And, it's pretty cool to walk into a hotel
Sure.
and your book is right there. And it's not like I don't have a fiduciary relationship with them and everything. And, I just invited you this coming Friday. It's like having a party, a little kid party, because I'm blessed that three behavioral healthcare centers have decided to underwrite a book signing at the Sunset Marquee. Now,
Oh,
what
wow.
could be more fun?
That's awesome. That's awesome. So when is that going to occur?
That's going to occur. I sent you an invitation. I wanted you to fly in Friday night from 4 to 7.
This Friday night?
Yeah, this Friday.
Oh, wow. I have to look at my calendar. I wasn't even
Um, Come to LA. We can get you a
Yeah.
discount in a room. But I don't know. I did send you one, Pam. It's
Okay. I
confused.
somehow I missed it, or I will go back and look at
Yeah,
it.
or
So,
just let me know. But
okay.
that is, and I think it's special. I've been doing a bunch of book signings right now, and they've been like incredible ladies groups.
Hmm.
Doing a keynote at a country friends luncheon, all kinds of, and never in a normal place. I never seem to do a book signing in a normal place.
Well, this is a fun place for sure. And when
Yeah,
I
this
looked at
is
this, I had actually never stayed at the Sunset Marquee, and I looked at it and I'm like, I next time I go to LA, I'm going to have to stay there at least one night. It looks like a marvelous place.
And it was a complete God shot that I found it. When I moved to West Hollywood, my middle daughter Felicia said, "You have to walk up this gigantic hill to go to Soul Cycle." Well, I can't ride a bicycle, but she said, "You're going to really like Soul Cycle," which I did. And those were the heydays when Beckham and everybody rode a Soul Cycle. But on the way up, there was this place, it just doesn't is very nondescript. But I talked to everybody and I met all the doormen and they were just so wonderful. And so the summer I moved, they said, "We have a membership. You could swim here." And I like to swim. I didn't have a pool. And so I joined, so I peered behind there and everything. But it's an amazing place to be a muse. It's the home
Mhm.
of Nightingale Music Studios, where lots of rock music was made, Steven Tyler, and then it's the home of Morrison Gallery. And Morrison Gallery is an incredible photo gallery. So when you walk behind it, and then nobody, if there's anybody ever famous there, you don't even know. because
Yeah.
that's how low key. It's the most hidden thing in the world.
A gem.
A gem for
Yeah.
me, and it served as a muse.
Sure.
So that's why. So I get to do that this Friday, which is very exciting. But I'll be speaking on another vein. I'll be speaking at Oxford this year. I was
Oh, nice.
this week at the Master Series, and actually, I'm going to be talking about portraiture, sudden death, grief, and loss.
Very nice. Well, you're keeping yourself busy. I love it. You're a great mentor to me. I love it. And I appreciate you as a friend and colleague. And thank you very much for coming on.
Well,
And
thank you. I love the resilient butterfly. And, relationships are always synergistic. So I just want to affirm you and thank you so much for allowing me to be in your life.
thank you for joining the conversation today. If you are seeking help for yourself or a loved one, please reach out to our Feinberg Consulting team at 248-538-5425. That's 248-538-5425, and check out our website at feinbergcare.com. I'm grateful for our guests and all who have joined us today. Make sure you follow us on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you listen to podcasts.